excited about today's message. We're continuing our series that we're doing through the month of January and probably pushing into February called Slow Down to Catch Up. It's not just a series, really it's kind of a theme, an idea that I feel like God is wanting us to walk through this year as we continue to grow and to walk in things of His goodness. And so if you missed last week, we kind of set up the series and we talked about the problem with hurry and rushing around and some of the issues that we have with it. And if you consider yourself a member of this church, this is your church home, and you missed it for whatever reason last weekend, I encourage you, go back, watch it, listen to the podcast, take some time to hear it so that you can get an opportunity to allow that content to roll over. But I want to read the theme verse for this series. In fact, I'm going to read it in the Message translation this morning, and it's Matthew 11, verse 28, and says this: "Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly." I love these words of Jesus. I love this idea that He says, I can teach you not only how to rest, but how to work. I can teach you how to live this life so that you can live life to the fullest, full of His abundance and His goodness. And as we walk through this series, I'm excited to be talking about this as a church and to be walking through some of these ideas. And one of the things that we talked about last week is we talked about how we as a society have come to this point through many different factors that we are living at a extremely fast pace life. And we have so many things that are pulling on our time, pulling on our attention, pulling on our focus, pulling on our energy and resources that we just keep moving and we can't seem to slow down. In fact, so much so that in our culture, in our community, we don't want slow things. We make fun of slow things. We only are about speed, and it just has created this idea or this sense of burden where we can't seem to catch our breath, and people are walking around weary and tired and without rest. And we can look at different causes, and there's not, like many things in society, there's not one thing that's the culprit. It's a whole group of things that has created this pace in which we live. But one of the big things that we find that are at the core of this, not just in modern times, but in history, this idea of time and speeding up, is actually technology. Technology has been at the root of this idea that it is this amazing blessing, but in many times it can create other unforeseen consequences as a result of embracing some of these technological things. And it's not a new thing, and I'm definitely not anti-technology. I love technology. But I want to kind of go through and take a moment and kind of give you a little brief history of technology, the technology of speed and time. It is very brief. And if you know me, I'm a real nerd, and especially a real history nerd. And so I could talk about this way too long, but I want to take a second. So here's the thing. In 200 BC, so 200 years before Jesus was born, thereabouts, was the invention of the Roman sundial. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like just the stone and it kind of tells the time by a shadow, right? The Roman stone. And Plato, a Roman playwright, wrote this: "The gods confound the man who first found out how to distinguish the hours. Confound him too, who in this place set up a sundial to cut and hack my days so wretchedly into small pieces." 200 BC, sundial. Somebody put a rock up in the middle of the thing, and he's upset about it. It is messing my life up. It is taking all my time away. Now I got to be certain places at certain times, and there's no excuse other than it was cloudy. All of a sudden, we confounded and we measured and we created a system of how many hours are in a day. And then we correlated those with our rotation around the sun. And then we put this sundial up so we can know that based on this, it'll give you a fairly accurate measurement of the time of day that's universal in the area. And so we have this sundial. And from that point on, people have been complaining that technology is creating a burden on their time and is stealing from their time, from their days. He was upset about it too, and it was just a rock. In the 6th century, Saint Benedict, he was a Catholic saint, and he organized monasteries, and he compelled monks to have 7 times of prayer a day. I mean, it's a good scriptural number, so he went with it, 7 times of prayer. But they kept on being late. And so they literally invented the mechanized clock to make sure that monks were on time. So they couldn't be like, well, it was cloudy, sir, so I didn't know that the thing messed up. He's like, we're going to eliminate the need for that, and we're going to create mechanized clocks. And it was first utilized within monasteries so that we could rally around prayer, which is not a bad deal. Like, hey, I want you on time to pray. Sounds good, right? Sounds really good to me. I don't want late monks. In 1370, and when you think about this in the whole history of the world, it's very interesting. But in 1370, the first public clock was placed in Cologne, Germany. Up to that point, there was like sundials, there was people who had individual clocks, but the first clock in which everyone had a synchronized thing, that there was no excuse anymore. Didn't matter if the sun was out there, didn't matter if you were rich enough to own one, like there was a clock that made loud noises, and you could not say, I didn't know what time it was. Because people are like, you didn't hear the bells? The bell tolled 4 times. Where were you? You're missing it. Like they had this time. And there's a guy who's a medievalist historian named Jacques Le Goff. He said, life was dominated by agrarian rhythms, free of haste, careless of exactitude, unconcerned by productivity. This was the lifestyle until all of a sudden there's now time. And the concept of how we understand it. And I think about some of these people, they probably view time a lot closer to how my wife views time even now. Like it's just kind of like a roundabout general idea of when you should show up somewhere. Like it's not a concrete to the second. If you're invited to come to my house and you show up on time, that's like really rude. You need to show up 20 minutes late or else you're not our friends. And if you happen to show up early, our friendship's over. I'm just telling you the truth. I wouldn't exaggerate on stage. But we have different cultures that value time differently, but the reality is we still are time-centric. And I love this quote that John Mark Comer wrote, the author of this book that I mentioned this morning. It says, when the sun set our rhythms of work and rest, it did so under the control of God. But the clock is under the control of the employer, a far more demanding master. When we look at how God designed the earth and the heavens, and we look at this idea of rest, and we look at the seasons, he didn't even keep a consistency of how many hours of daylight we have. He knew that there'd be seasons in which you could have more activity and more work and more sunlight and more moving. And then as a result of those seasons, you would need seasons of less work and being able to be quiet and that it's cold. He did everything to try to show us in the natural. There are times to work a lot and there are times to pull back, to slow down, to rest. Like that is something that God put within this concept of earth, and something that we, through technology, have allowed ourselves to say, it doesn't matter how many hours of daylight there are, I'm still going to ask you to work the same hours of the day. And then we had a really big, massive change within the history of technology. In 1879, Edison invented the light bulb. And now we have no excuses that even nighttime does not stop you from your ability to be productive. There was always fires, there are always candles, but if you've ever really tried to do anything by candlelight, you'll realize that you weren't that effective. You just didn't do it. That's why before the invention of the light bulb, the average person slept 11 hours a night. 11 hours a night. That's why when you think about some of our like heroes of faith that were like pre-Edison and you read about them, it's like, oh man. And it's that stuff like, I remember reading, it's like they woke up at 4:30 in the morning every day with God to spend time. It's like they had slept 9 hours. I could sleep 9 hours and wake up. Like it's not, I'm not belittling their piety or their holiness. But all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. If I wake up at 4, that means I'm getting like 3 hours of sleep. But if they wake up at 4, they're getting 9 as opposed to 11. That's still more hours than I'm getting now. They reprioritized 11 hours. Currently, right now, the average American sleeps 7 hours. And I bet you, if I were to ask a lot of you, most of you say, you're lucky if you get that. You may be in bed for 7 hours. You just may not be sleeping for all that time. And then we enter into this idea, and we don't have time to cover all of them, but this idea of labor-saving devices. With electricity and so many things, we have all these inventions that are labor, time-saving devices. Things like washing machines and laundry machines and dishwashers and things like modern heat and air. I mean, when you think about it, we're in the winter. When it's cold, you had to go out, you had to chop down a tree, you had to chop that tree into smaller places, you had to haul all that stuff to your house, then build it up, turn on fire, light it, hopefully you're good, it'll light up, and then you have heat. Now, I pull out my phone, I'm like, oh, I'm a little chilly, and I push a button, and all of a sudden I can raise it up a couple degrees. Or you have those light switch fireplaces, and the light switch is not even easy enough. You put a smart switch on it so you could do it from your phone. Because you don't have to get up to turn it on. It's 2021. We just saved like 17 hours to do the same thing. They also didn't have to work out, though. If you've ever cut down a tree, that was your CrossFit right there. 17 hours. Like we say, like, I don't know how, and it wasn't a one-time thing. You didn't chop down one tree. You did it all the time. And yet we don't have to do any of that, and yet I don't have any time. My chicken doesn't come with feathers on it. Like, I could go on and on and on, and yet, no time. No time. This is why in 1967, there was a Senate subcommittee who was told in a very official report that by 1985, the year I was born, 1985, Americans would work 22 hours a week and 27 weeks a year. And then we don't know what they're going to do all the time. Because that's all it's going to take. Everyone's become too productive, too efficient. That's all it's going to take. This is also when they predicted the future, like George Jetson style, right? Like, hey, it was a rough day, honey. I had to push the button 3 times today. So exhausted. That was with the assumption that we maintained the same level of production and consumption that we were then. They didn't foresee the fact that we would continue to grow in our appetite for consumerism and goods and keeping up with everybody. So therefore, now, we don't just not work 22 hours a week and 27 weeks a year. We work 4 more hours a week than people did in 1979, which is 8.6 days more a year. We no longer consider leisure a status of making it. We consider the busyness and the hecticness of life and moving from one thing to another. That is the status of being successful. Only losers have free time. That just means you're not busy enough. And here's what's crazy. Some of you will remember this. Up until the 1960s, and even in some states and counties until the 90s of the 1900s, in the United States, it was illegal for businesses to be open on Sunday. Businesses were all closed. Not just Chick-fil-A, kids. I know that's your worst thing about Sundays is Chick-fil-A is closed. But everything was closed. On Sunday was a national day of rest. The only thing that was allowed to be open were religious gatherings. That's it. You didn't go to the mall, you didn't go to this, you didn't catch up on this, you didn't go to the Lowe's and buy your stuff to do a project. Like you did, we had it, and in one generation, we went from having a culture where everyone rested and caught up on Sundays, everyone, because you couldn't do anything else, to no one does. No one. And we say like, wow, look at Chick-fil-A, they're closed on Sunday, because they're the only ones. In one generation, we lose a culture of rest. Because we can buy more, do more, make more, serve more, get more done. My favorite cartoons were back whenever Donald Duck was always trying to enjoy his Sunday and he never could. Like, I love those cartoons but it was within the culture. Like, well, of course, what do you do on Sundays other than like hang out? Maybe like trim your bushes. That's why the Sunday newspaper was the biggest newspaper. Not because like that was the only day you had time to read that much. And yet now, Sunday's just another day to catch up, do things, have sports activities, everything else we do in our life. And then the big one, 2007, we have the invention of the iPhone, the smartphone, which all happens to correspond within months of when Facebook allows anyone with an email to get onto it. The App Store's created, the cloud enters year 1, Intel changes their processing thing. It's the real revolution of the digital age. And now many of us can't even remember what it's like to not have one of these in our pocket, to have infinity in your pocket, to never be lost, to always have an answer, to have entertainment forever, to not have to talk to someone in a line because I can just look at something on my phone. It hasn't even been 13 years. My son's 2007, 13 years. And we have this coming in. And here's the thing about this. Everything on our phones, everything that this is now vying for your attention. And it is purposely and intentionally designed to become addictive to you and to vie in, to have the biggest amount of your attention and focus. Everything about it is designed that way. And here's the thing, here's why. It's constantly changing. In the year 2000, some of you Conan O'Brien fans know what I'm talking about. In the year 2000, the average attention span for an adult was 12 seconds, which is not very good. I'm just gonna be honest with you, that's not very good. Today, and in fact, it's maybe worse than this now, but when this book was written, I was pulling some stuff. Today, it is 8 seconds. 8 seconds. To put it in perspective, goldfish have a 9-second attention span. We as a society, the smartest species of human beings, are losing to goldfish in our attention. That is depressing. That is why when you walk on your phone or when you watch certain commercials and it feels like maybe for a minute, like it's so fast paced, I don't understand why, it's because they know in 8 seconds you're gone. So they give you a new 8 seconds to a new 8 seconds to a new 8 seconds. They're gonna continually hit you because every single 8 seconds there is a bid and a literal auction for your attention to steal it from you, to take your attention. And we can look at it because this is why. All these things, and listen, I'm so thankful for cell phones. I'm not knocking them. I enjoy it. There's productivity and technology. I love it. I'm glad I don't have to chop firewood anymore. Like, all these ththings are great. But here's the thing we have to remember. All these free things that we have in our life, like I got these free apps, they make my life better. The thing we have to remember, if you did not pay for it, you are no longer the customer. You are the product. And people are trying to purchase you every single day. Facebook is not free. Instagram is not free. Your Google is not free. They are paying for you. You are the product that they are consuming. That is the reality of every second of every day that you're on your device or on your laptop. And so here's the thing. We have all these distractions. We have all these things flowing at us, and we don't even know how much time we're spending on it. The average iPhone user touches their phone 2,617 times a day. They're on it for over 2.5 hours with 76 interactions. And by the way, if you're a millennial, it's double that on average. I checked mine this last week. I was on my phone for 35 hours this last week. I don't want to be on my phone for 35 hours. And you may be sitting there like, oh, I'm not. Check it. Look at it. It doesn't get you all at once. I didn't binge my phone. They went the slot machine approach. A nickel here, a quarter there, a 2-minute video there, a 30-second interaction here. And then all of a sudden, your life's gone. They're not going to get you with a 2-hour, because they know they can't. You can only stay attention a little less than a goldfish. They're not going to give you a documentary. They're going to give you an 8-second clip that's funny, or that's serious, or that's irritating. We live in this and we walk in this, and so now we're in this idea where we're constantly in a complete state of distraction, and not just distraction, an addicted distraction that we cannot get rid of because we are now full-blown addicted to our phones and our devices. And maybe for you it's something else. Maybe it's not your phone. Maybe you have, but you have distractions. You have things that are vying for your attention. And the thing that we haven't really asked ourselves, and we're just now starting to look at, is what is all this hurry and rush and distraction and attention stealing, what does it do to our souls? What does it do to us as humans? We weren't designed to be like this. And here's what's happening. Psychologists and doctors are now talking about a new epidemic, a new sickness that is being diagnosed at a frantic pace. It is called hurry sickness. And the definition is a behavior pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiousness. Another version, it says, a malaise in which a person feels chronically short of time, and so tends to perform every task faster and tends to get flustered when encountering any kind of delay. We're in a constant rush because we're not meant to live this way. We're not meant to live at this speed. Here's some symptoms. You say, I don't know if maybe I don't. Here's some symptoms. If you go to the grocery store and you look and you will be in one line and then switch to another line because you think it's going to get done faster, that is a symptom of hurry sickness. If you pull up to the bank and you will stop to count how many cars are there and try to do some kind of rudimentary mathematical equation so that you can get to the shortest line because heaven forbid you wait 15 seconds more. If you've ever started multitasking to multitask to only forget what your original thing was that you were doing, or to get on your phone to only find yourself on Instagram when you were trying to do something productive. Where am I? And listen, I'm only telling you things I've done. If it fits, to quote Woody, if the boot fits. We find ourselves in this rush, and it is literally deteriorated. Listen to this quote from Thomas Merton. He said, the rush and pressure of modern life is a pervasive form of contemporary violence. And he wrote that 50 years ago. Because hurry kills your relationships. It kills intimacy. Love takes time. It kills your relationship with God. It kills the fruits of the Spirit. They're not compatible. They don't work together. Hurry is not compatible with wisdom. We did a whole series on wisdom. And hurry is found in taking time with God and allowing Him to define things for you through the context of relationship and slowly walking with Him. The original sin that Adam and Eve committed was God said, I will teach you how to live in wisdom through relationship with me. And then the enemy said, I can give it to you with one bite. You'll be just like God. All the information, none of the time. You don't have to wait. Hurry. We find ourselves here. Wayne Mueller, in a book on Sabbath, wrote this. He said, a successful life has become a violent enterprise. We make war on our own bodies, pushing them beyond their limits. War on our children because we can't find enough time to be with them when they are hurt and afraid and need our company. War on our spirit because we are too preoccupied to listen to the quiet voices that seek to nourish and refresh us. War on our communities because we are fearfully protecting what we have and do not feel safe enough to be kind and generous. War on the earth because we cannot take time to place our feet on the ground and allow it to feed us, to taste its blessing and give thanks. And here's this. Everything is vying for your attention. Everything is vying for the time in which you are in a hurry for, and you're rushing, and there's not enough. And I would like to submit to you today that your attention is your most valuable resource. Your attention is the thing that everything is trying to pull on. Your attention is your greatest resource, your finite resource. And here's why I would say that, because of this. Attention leads to awareness. Here's an example. I didn't realize that I was really hungry and wanting a triple Baconator from Wendy's until an ad brought my attention to how good it looked, and then I was aware how hungry I was. You didn't know that you needed those new shoes until that ad popped up, and your attention was brought to how amazing they were, and then you were aware how poor your shoe game really is. Not you, Leon. Like things come to our attention, and until we have attention brings awareness, and awareness will create action. Like that is what happens, and that is why your attention is up for bid, because they know if I can get your attention, I can create the awareness to the need, and if I create the awareness to the need, then your resources and your time will follow it. Your attention is the valuable resource, which is why when Jesus says, wherever your treasure is, there the desire of your heart will be also. Historically, we've been taught that that's our time and our money. It's like, well, I go to church and I give, so I'm good. But where is your attention? Where is your resource that controls the other two? Because the thing I hear all the time is like, man, I had this great relationship with God, and then he just stopped showing up. He wasn't there anymore. I lost it. Like I'm there. It's not the same as I used to. And here's the thing. God has not moved anywhere. God has not stopped loving you. God has not stopped giving his son and creating grace for you. God has not changed anything. His presence and his pleasingness and his thoughts towards you are the same. But the reality is throughout life, our attention has been diverted elsewhere, and we are no longer aware of the presence of the God who moved heaven and hell so that he could be in relationship with you. And we find ourselves lacking and missing our God. And then we blame him. That's what I've done. But when my attention is turned to God, I'm suddenly made aware of his presence. And I can say, if I go up to heaven, you're there. If I go down to hell, you're there. If I go into the woods, if I go into the oceans, no matter where I go, your presence is there. I cannot escape your goodness because my attention is on you. And now all of a sudden, I am aware of all the wonderful blessings and truths that he's brought to me in my life. Because awareness follows your attention. And your awareness produces action within your life. But our attention is being stolen from us every second of every day. Ruthlessly, with no thought to your health or goodness. That's why I think that God said in Romans chapter 10, verse 17, so then faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. He knew there'd be a day when society had the attention span of a goldfish. And so he said, you just can't hear it once. You just can't hear it twice. You need to hear the word about Jesus and what he says about you over and over and over again, because it is in the repetitive nature that keeps your attention on him so that you're aware of his goodness, and not just aware of his goodness towards you, the identity that you have through Jesus, the grace that you've received from his cross, the thing that you can walk in, the challenge and the calling that he's walking with you, and the thing he wants to partner with you. You become aware that you are not just something in an infinite universe, but that you are loved by the Creator personally, that he has a plan for you, that you matter and you make a difference. You become aware of it, and you see him moving everywhere that you go. And you hear it, and you hear it, and you hear it, and we have to hear it. Some people are like, man, when I first got saved, man, I was on fire, I was passionate, and then, I don't know, it just buzzed away. When you were attentive to Jesus, you were aware of him. When you're aware, you felt him. When you felt him, you were saying, but then all of a sudden our attention is somewhere else. Maybe it's Instagram. Maybe it's movies. Maybe it's Netflix. Maybe it's a bad relationship. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's sports. I don't know what your attention is, and I'm here to tell you, I don't judge you for any of it. I don't condemn you for any of it. That is all between you and Jesus. Figure it out. It's none of my business. What I am here to tell you is your attention is valuable. And guess what? I love this about God. I used to think it was weird, and now God is a jealous God. He wants your attention because he knows if he has your attention, you can be aware of all the good things that he has for you. He's not jealous because it's self-serving. He's jealous because it's what serves you the best. And he wants your attention because he wants relationship with you. He wants to teach you how to live. He wants to teach you how to walk through this life in the best way possible. And so with all this in mind, and the battle for our attention, the fact that we find ourselves hurrying and constantly chasing something. And maybe you find yourself running away from past hurts, or maybe you find yourself running to the next thing that will give you accolades, or maybe you're just too busy and too stuck, and the world has too eaten up your attention where you're just constantly on the move trying to find the next thing. I'm reminded of these words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. When he says, "And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?" Is anything more valuable than your soul? What good is it if you get that promotion at work but lose your family? What good is it if you gain all those extra followers but all your real friends are gone? What good is it if you continue to walk out of these things but your relationship with God goes stone cold and you forget that he loves you? What good are all these things if you lose the very nature and relationship and desire that God has for you? And it is not something that you have to earn. It is not something that your good behavior will result in. You don't get these things to get gold stars in heaven. You don't have to pray to God so that you can change his mind and so that you can change your own mind and remind yourself what God's word said. You don't get to come to church so that you get a sticker of attendance and so that you can be encouraged and challenged to grow into the next season of life and be surrounded by other believers who are walking through real life together and relationship and friendship. You don't get to do these things to try to change God's mind. You do these things so that you can find yourself aware of the grace that he's already given through Jesus Christ. He's not doing anything else. Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father, the work complete. How aware are we of the completed work? How aware are we of the fact that we're unconditionally loved, that I am who he says he is, that I have the mind of Christ, that as he is, so am I in this world, that my body is healed, that his body was broken so that mine could be, so that he was alone so I never had to be, that he walked through difficulties with no one around him so that I could have a friend who sticks closer than a brother through every single season, that I can walk in the full promises that God has for me. And my attention is all he's asking for. But I have so many things that I have to say no to. So many things that are pulling on me. Every time I try to just do something good, this thing goes off. Every time I try to go somewhere, another thing happens. And it can all look good. But is it good for my soul? Is it good for me? Here's the thing. Starting next week, we're going to begin to walk through how we can live in a modern society with an ancient God and some ancient practices that are just as real today as they were 2,000 years ago when they wrote them. We're going to begin to see what it means like to be a modern day believer who practices ancient things that you'll be shocked that they are just as valuable today as they were 2,000 years ago. This is not a one-time thing. This is not a one-time service. This is a journey. We are in a thing. Let me just tell you this. If this is the only thing you accomplish in your life in 2021, I am telling you, your life will be changed. All your other resolutions can go out the window. Because I am telling you this will change your marriage. This will change your parenting. This will change your relationship with your boss. This will change your body. This will change your mind. This will produce freedom from addiction. This will produce freedom from sin. This is the result of having intimate relationship with God. It changes everything. He is all-encompassing, all-inclusive. He does not stop coming after you. No matter what he has to do, he will get to you. And when we give him his attention, he will continue to show you how much he loves you. It will change your life. And we're on this journey together. And I know for some of you it's hard. I know for some personalities it's hard. It is harder than others to let go and to stop. I understand. I am there. But God's calling us to live differently, look differently than the world. And we're going to start talking about, if I want to be like Jesus, maybe I need to live a little like Jesus lived. Maybe I need to change some things. But so my challenge is this for you this week. for you individually, for you and your spouse to talk about, to look at your family, to analyze, what are things in my life that are stealing my attention that don't produce fruitfulness in my life? And I'm not telling you you have to stop anything. I'm not telling you anything is of the devil. I'm not telling you we got to go out there and burn all of our iPhones in the middle of the lobby. That's not what this is. What I am telling you is that God will speak to you about what moderation looks like. He will speak to you about what is beneficial for you. He will speak to you about what is good, pleasing, and perfect for you. He will talk to you about it. And I can tell you, I feel this confidently. There is no one here in this room who doesn't have something that is stealing your attention. It may not be what I mentioned today, but it's something. And if not, if you say, no, I don't think so, I would just point you to Romans chapter 2. You may hear everything from Romans chapter 1 and say, no, that's not me, that's me. And then Paul says, you may think you're not like that, but you are just like all these other sinners. I promise there's something. And the result, the more attention we put in the proper places, the more fruitfulness we'll see. This is a year that we're going to slow down and we're going to see God catch us up in ways that we didn't expect possible. I cannot wait to walk on this journey with you. And I say walk it with you because I am walking this journey with you. I just told you I was on my cell phone for 35 hours this last week. That embarrasses me. And if you ask me, how long were you on your phone? I'm like, I don't know, 2 hours. That's the worst part. You have no reality. First service came up and a bunch of people were telling themselves, look at my phone. Father, I have sinned. It's been 6 years since my last confession. It's a journey. We won't get there overnight. We won't. I forgot my phone in the back during worship, and I checked for it 4 times during worship in the middle of this sermon series. Wouldn't you believe it? For business things, of course. Not because I'm just constantly pulling out my phone anytime there's 3 seconds. This is what I'm walking through. This is what my family's walking through. The practices we're going to talk about is what we are walking through. We are doing it. We're doing it. I'm inviting you to be on this journey with me. Because I love you so much. I don't want you to stay where you're at. God loves you so much. He doesn't want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to go down to like the less than 5-second attention span. I don't even know what animal they would put there because the goldfish is already so offensive to me. Soon it's going to be like a rock. A rock has more attention span than you. It's not even alive. I want to be different. We can't change the world. We can't change politics. We can't even change America. We can change this community right here. And that, I think, is a great first step. I'd love for people to come here and be like, wow, what a bunch of weirdos. That's what we're inviting ourselves to, church. To experience God's grace on a level that shows us we don't have to do these things. These things were provided for us because of his goodness. And we get to experience the goodness of God, the glory of God here in the land of the living. So this week, take some time, pray. It may hurt. He may talk about your favorite thing. Sorry. Blame him, not me. You may need to have conversations with your teenagers. Again, blame God, don't blame me. These are things we get to do, church. This is the last thing I want to do. I've kept you late. A lot late. But I want to pray. And if you're here and you've never accepted Jesus, I want to give you a chance. It's just simple as repeating this prayer. I'm going to ask everyone to repeat this prayer after me. Just say, Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to die for me so my sins could be forgiven and I could be set free. It's in Jesus' name we pray. If you made a decision today, you can either tell the prayer team down here at the front after church, or you can text the phone number they're going to put on the screen. But just make sure you communicate with someone. We want to celebrate you. We want to answer questions. We want to get resources in your hand. And for everybody else, last thing, look here. Did you feel it just for a couple of seconds? Did you feel a pace settle? Do you feel what stillness and peace can be together? When we just take a moment and give God that time. I'm not promising you every Sunday is going to be late. My kids are not going to be happy. But we can feel something that maybe we don't feel in our normal life. But I think God wants us to feel it more and more frequently. And I'm looking forward to finding it with you over the next few weeks in this year. Hey, you're loved. You're dismissed. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Go and sprint to pick up your kids so they're not crying too loud because they miss you very much. All right, goodbye.